Good afternoon again, and we extend a cordial welcome to all gathered here for this commemorative ceremony, convened to mark the centenary of the birth of the historic leader of the Cuban Revolution, Fidel Castro Ruz. On the 13th of August 1926, in Virán, a locality in what is now the province of Holguín in eastern Cuba, Fidel Alejandro Castro Ruz was born, a figure whose imprint upon the history of Cuba would be matched only by the resonance of his thought and actions beyond the shores of his homeland. Today, from this podium in Port Spain, we convene to reflect upon his legacy and to honor a man whose ideas and vision for the future have shaped successive generations. 100 years after his birth, his convictions remain a subject of reflection and critical discourse, particularly in light of the multifaceted challenges confronting our contemporary world. Before proceeding with our program, it is our privilege to formally acknowledge and extend our warmest greetings to the distinguished guests who grace this occasion with their presence here this afternoon. His Worship Chinua Alleyne, Alderman and Mayor of Port Spain. Chief Secretary of the Tobago House of Assembly, Farley Agostine. His Excellency Álvaro Sánchez Cordero, Ambassador of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela and Dean of the Diplomatic Corps, along with other distinguished representatives of the Diplomatic Corps. Ms. Michaela Pandey, Leader of the Patriotic Front. Mr. David Abdulah, Political Leader of the Social Justice Movement. Professor Rosemarie Bell-Antoine, Chancellor of the University of the West Indies. Representative of political and social organizations. Members of the Cuban Medical Brigade serving in Trinidad and Tobago. Members of the Abraza Cuba, Association of Cubans residing in Trinidad and Tobago. Members of the press, friends all. The convening of this event in this distinguished auditorium in Port Spain has been made possible through the generous hospitality of the Port Spain City Corporation under the leadership of its mayor, Mr. Chinua Alleyne. We wish to express our sincere appreciation to him for affording us access to these splendid facilities and for his invaluable support. We also wish to recognize and extend our thanks to the sponsors whose generous contributions have facilitated the organization and execution of this ceremony. To each of them, we offer our profound gratitude. Acado Foods, Blue Waters, Creamery, and the Abraza Cuba Association of Cubans residing in Trinidad and Tobago. It is now our distinct honor to invite His Worship, the Mayor of Port Spain, Mr. Chinua Alleyne, to deliver a few words of welcome. Please, Mr. Alleyne.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. And the protocols having been so ably established, please permit me simply to recognize His Excellency Gustavo Véliz Olivares, Ambassador of the Republic of Cuba to the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. My friend, Mr. Farley Chavez Augustin, Chief Secretary of the Tobago House of Assembly. His Excellency Álvaro Sánchez Cordero, Ambassador of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela to the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, and Dean of the Diplomatic Corps. Our friends from foreign lands, Your Excellencies, Heads of Foreign Missions, my colleagues on the Council of the City of Port of Spain, and permit me, ladies and gentlemen, to recognize in our presence this evening former Mayor of Port of Spain, His Worship, Alderman Louis Leasing, specially invited guests, members of the media, ladies and gentlemen. It brings me great pleasure to have the opportunity to welcome each and every one of you to the Murchison Brown Auditorium at City Hall on the occasion of the 100th birthday commemoration of Fidel Castro. El Comandante lived an extraordinary life, a giant of a man who was an ardent supporter of the traditionally dispossessed in every part of the globe. His leadership has shaped this hemisphere and the globe, and his legacy continues to do so even a decade after his passing. In 1959, shortly after the successful revolution, El Comandante landed at Piarco International Airport whilst on his way to Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. Whilst in Trinidad, he visited the monastery at Mount St. Benedict, where he was very warmly received by the Benedictine monks. This unplanned visit was one of the first of many interactions and would eventually lead to the establishment of diplomatic relations between the government and people of Cuba and the government and people of Trinidad and Tobago in December 1972. Today, more than 50 years after the establishment of diplomatic relations, we celebrate the legacy of a world leader who demonstrated the might of self-determination, non-alignment, and South-South cooperation despite our relatively small size. And ladies and gentlemen, on a bit of a personal anecdote, I recall being told a story by a former Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago about the role that Fidel Castro played in ensuring that the 5th Summit of the Americas that was held here in Port of Spain in 2009 was a resounding success in mobilizing all of the leaders of Latin America to attend. El Comandante is credited as having said, "It does not matter how small you are if you have faith and plan of action." In Trinidad and Tobago, we continue to have boundless faith in our destiny and in our continued relationship with our brothers and sisters in Cuba. On behalf of the Council and the people of Port of Spain, I extend warm and fraternal greetings to the people of Cuba and the Cuban diaspora resident here in Trinidad and Tobago, and I welcome all of you to the capital city as we celebrate the legacy of a distinguished son of Cuban soil. Ladies and gentlemen, good evening, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Worship, for your thoughtful remarks. Fidel, as he continues to be known by the Cuban people, always maintained a close and enduring ties with the Caribbean and its peoples. In 1972, when Barbados, Jamaica, Guyana, and Trinidad and Tobago took the decision to establish diplomatic relations with Cuba, during a period of complexity for the region, a new chapter was inaugurated in the relationship between Cuba and the Caribbean. Fidel described this decision as a noble gesture of solidarity, unprecedented in our hemisphere, and in subsequent years he acknowledged the courage shown by the founding fathers of those nations. For Fidel, solidarity was an unwavering principle, one that ought to be extended to all peoples of the world. Cuba has endeavored to preserve this legacy, sharing, as has often been affirmed, not what which we possess in abundance, but that which we have. In turn, the people of the Caribbean had stood in solidarity with Cuba, reciprocating that spirit of fraternity and thereby strengthening the bonds of friendship that unite our nations. I now invite to receive a special message from Havana, delivered by Fernando González Llort, President of the Cuban Institute of Friendship with the Peoples, ICAP, and hero of the Republic of Cuba.
Un abrazo fraterno y revolucionario a todos los miembros del Movimiento de Solidaridad con Cuba en Trinidad y Tobago, a sus coordinadores, a las organizaciones políticas y sociales que lo integran y a cada persona que con su entrega, conciencia y amor mantienen viva la llama de la hermandad entre nuestros pueblos caribeños. Permítanme presentarme. Yo soy Fernando González Llort, uno de los 5 cubanos que luchamos y sufrimos prisión en Estados Unidos por defender a nuestra patria. Y hoy les hablo no desde una tribuna oficial, sino desde la emoción de quien sabe, por experiencia propia, lo que significa la solidaridad en los momentos más oscuros. Saludo en especial a la Asociación de Cubanos Residentes, a los de Trinidad and Tobago Friends of Cuba y a todas las organizaciones que recientemente hicieron posible esa hermosa donación al pueblo cubano, fruto de la campaña de solidaridad iniciada el pasado 1 de marzo. Sepan que cada gesto de ustedes llega a Cuba como un rayo de luz en medio de la tormenta. Y yo sé de tormenta y también sé de luces. Cuando hablo de Fidel, no lo hago como quien estudió su figura en los libros. Yo hablo de Fidel como quien lo conoció, lo trató, lo sintió de cerca en los momentos de mayor desamparo. Durante los 16 años que pasé injustamente encarcelado en prisiones del imperio, junto a mis hermanos Ramón, Antonio, Gerardo y René, Fidel fue nuestro faro, Fidel fue nuestro padre y Fidel fue nuestra brújula. Recuerdo con especial nitidez una de sus llamadas telefónicas a la prisión de Florence, Colorado, cuando las condiciones eran durísimas y el aislamiento nos golpeaba con toda su crudeza. Su voz al otro lado del teléfono no era la de un estadista distante, era la de un hombre que le decía a Tony en esa calidez que solo él tenía: muchachos, no bajen la cabeza, no pierdan la fe, Cuba los espera. Cada día que pasan allí es un día menos para la victoria. Esa fue la fuerza que nos sostuvo, esa fue la mano de Fidel tendida desde la distancia. Y es que, como siempre he afirmado y lo ratifico hoy con más convicción que nunca, Fidel fue un gigante político, un hombre de grandes luces, pero por encima de todo fue un gigante moral. No es una frase hecha, es una verdad que llevo grabada en el alma. Porque solo un gigante moral podía asumir como propia la causa de 5 muchachos que luchaban en tierra enemiga y hacer de su liberación una batalla internacional. Hoy, a más de una década de su partida física, el legado de Fidel no solo sigue vigente, nos interpela cada mañana con más urgencia, porque el contexto actual, queridos amigos, es brutal. Cuba atraviesa momentos de enorme tensión y dificultades. El recrudecimiento del bloqueo económico, comercial y financiero, ese cerco genocida que lleva más de 6 décadas asfixiando nuestra isla, se ha intensificado de manera cruel. A ello se suman las medidas coercitivas unilaterales, la infame inclusión de Cuba en la lista arbitraria de países supuestamente patrocinadores del terrorismo y el cerco energético que ha afectado duramente a nuestro pueblo. No se trata solo de un asedio económico, es un estrangulamiento cotidiano que golpea la vida de las familias, que limita el funcionamiento de nuestros hospitales, que afecta la alimentación de nuestros niños y la educación de nuestros jóvenes. Es, como han denunciado valientemente las organizaciones de solidaridad con Cuba en Trinidad y Tobago, un castigo colectivo que viola el derecho internacional y la Carta de las Naciones Unidas y que viola los derechos humanos de todos los cubanos. Pero Fidel nos legó algo más que un proyecto social, nos legó una cultura de la resistencia, esa resistencia serena, digna y heroica que el pueblo cubano ha desplegado en cada esquina de la isla, negándose a claudicar ante la adversidad. Y yo, que he conocido el encierro y la soledad, les digo, esa resistencia no es gritos ni estridencia, es trabajo, es estudio, es producción y es fe inquebrantable en el futuro. Fidel nos enseñó que la solidaridad no es una palabra vacía, sino el combustible que mueve las causas justas en este mundo. Nos enseñó que los pequeños pueblos, unidos por lazos de hermandad, pueden hacer temblar a los imperios. Nos enseñó que la dignidad no se negocia y que la soberanía no se vende. Y yo, que estuve en el ojo del huracán, que fui pieza de cambio en las maniobras del imperio, sé de lo que hablo. Fidel nos enseñó que el heroísmo no es otra cosa que el cumplimiento del deber y que la causa de Cuba es la causa de todos los pueblos que aspiran a un mundo más justo. Pero hay una enseñanza de Fidel que quiero destacar especialmente. La solidaridad no es un acto unilateral, es un intercambio de humanidad, porque así como ustedes nos tienden la mano en estos momentos difíciles, Cuba ha tendido y tenderá siempre la suya a los pueblos del Caribe y del mundo. No lo olvidemos, fueron los médicos cubanos los que acudieron a las comunidades más apartadas del Caribe. Fueron las becas cubanas las que formaron a generaciones de profesionales en su tierra. Fue Cuba la que desde 1972 y Trinidad y Tobago fue de los primeros países caribeños en establecer relaciones diplomáticas con nosotros, a pesar de la feroz oposición de Washington, abrió sus brazos a la hermandad caribeña. Esa es la esencia del pensamiento de Fidel, la solidaridad como eje de las relaciones internacionales, como antídoto contra el egoísmo de los poderosos, como camino hacia un orden internacional más justo, más humano y más soberano. Y en este escenario tan complejo, la labor de ustedes adquiere una relevancia mayúscula. Su voz no solo anuncia o denuncia con razón y con datos las injusticias del bloqueo. Su voz construye un puente de esperanza entre el pueblo de Trinidad y Tobago y el pueblo cubano. Ese lazo de fraternidad que mantiene vivos los ideales de nuestro comandante es el mejor y el más auténtico homenaje que se le puede rendir, porque Fidel siempre creyó en la fuerza de los pueblos organizados, en la capacidad de la sociedad civil para alzar su voz frente a la injusticia. Por eso, ver a 13 organizaciones políticas y sociales de Trinidad y Tobago unidas en una campaña de solidaridad, verlas entregando donativos a nuestra embajada en Puerto España, verla protestando frente a la embajada de Estados Unidos en Queens Park, Savannah, eso, queridos amigos, es mantener vivo a Fidel. Eso es hacer realidad aquello que él soñó, un Caribe unido, un Caribe fraterno, un Caribe solidario. Sepan que a pesar de las carencias y las dificultades, los cubanos seguiremos adelante con nuestro proyecto social socialista, con la fe infinita en la victoria que Fidel nos inculcó. Contamos con la unidad de nuestro pueblo, con la firmeza indestructible de la revolución, con una cultura heroica de resistencia y también con el inestimable apoyo de millones de amigos en todo el mundo y muy especialmente de ustedes aquí en el Caribe hermano. Yo, que he conocido el sabor amargo de la prisión y el sabor dulce de la libertad, les digo desde lo más profundo de mi ser, muchas gracias. Muchas gracias por no olvidar a Cuba. Muchas gracias por no olvidar a Fidel. Muchas gracias por ser esa voz que el imperio quiere silenciar y que ustedes alzan con valentía. Que el mundo sepa que Cuba cuenta con hermanos y hermanas en esta hermana nación caribeña. Que el mundo sepa que el ejemplo del comandante sigue iluminando la lucha por un mundo más justo. Que el mundo sepa que mientras exista un solo corazón solidario latiendo por Cuba, la revolución será invencible. Y mientras tenga aliento, llevaré su nombre y su legado por todos los rincones del planeta. Para finalizar, un fuerte y fraterno abrazo para todos y para todas, con el mismo calor con que Fidel nos abrazaba a los 5 cuando por fin regresamos a casa. Que viva Fidel, que viva la solidaridad inquebrantable entre los pueblos de Cuba y de Trinidad y Tobago. Muchas gracias.
As part of this tribute, we invite you to view a brief audiovisual presentation produced by our friend Julien, featuring images and episodes from the life and career of Fidel.
Hay algo que no nos gusta y no nos gusta que nos amenacen. No nos gusta que traten de intimidarnos. No nos gusta. Además, nuestro pueblo hace tiempo que ha perdido ya la idea de lo que es el miedo.
Señor presidente, señores delegados, a su señoría el delegado de los Estados Unidos, aprovecho la oportunidad para decirle que hay muchas madres en los campos de Cuba y muchas madres en Cuba esperando todavía su telegrama de condolencia por los hijos que les asesinaron las bombas de los Estados Unidos.
Nuestro país no lanza bombas contra otros pueblos, ni manda miles de aviones a bombardear ciudades. Nuestro país no posee armas nucleares, ni armas químicas, ni armas biológicas. La decena de miles de científicos con que cuenta nuestro país y sus médicos han sido educados en la idea de salvar vidas. Estaría en absoluta contradicción con su concepción, poner un científico o un médico a producir sustancias o bacterias o virus capaces de producir la muerte a otros seres humanos. Abre.
You open your hand.
Entonces, para la foto.
Now for the photograph.
Cuba no era el primer país agredido. Cuba no era el primer país en peligro de ser agredido. En este hemisferio todo el mundo sabe que el gobierno de los Estados Unidos siempre impuso su ley. La ley del más fuerte. Desaparezca la filosofía del despojo y habrá desaparecido la filosofía de la guerra. Desaparezcan las colonias. Desaparezca la explotación de los países por los monopolios y entonces la humanidad habrá alcanzado una verdadera etapa de progreso.
No deseamos que la sangre de cubanos y norteamericanos sea derramada en una guerra. No deseamos que un incalculable número de vidas de personas que pueden ser amistosas se pierdan en una contienda. Pero jamás un pueblo tuvo cosas tan sagradas que defender, ni convicciones tan profundas por las cuales luchar, de tal modo que prefiere desaparecer de la faz de la tierra antes que renunciar a la obra noble y generosa por la cual muchas generaciones de cubanos han pagado el elevado costo de muchas vidas de sus mejores hijos.
Before we say anything.
Una cosa antes de hablar, nada.
Before we say anything,
Antes de hablar absolutamente de cualquier tema,
you must tell me when you are coming to South.
me tiene que decir cuándo viene para Sudáfrica.
You say, just a moment.
Es seguro, sí, ellos reciben.
The sooner the better.
And our friend Cuba,
Y nuestro amigo Cuba,
which helped us in training our people,
que nos ayudó a entrenar a nuestra gente,
gave us resources to
que nos
get
dio
on with our struggle,
que nos ayudaron tanto a nuestra
trained our people.
que
as
entrenó
doctors and so on.
a nuestros médicos.
You have not come to our country.
Cuba no ha venido a visitarnos, usted no ha ido a visitar.
When are you coming?
Mandela was waiting. Fidel was invited to address the South African Parliament.
Nos acompaña la convicción más profunda de que las ideas pueden más que las armas, por sofisticadas y poderosas que éstas sean, digamos como el Che cuando se despidió de nosotros, hasta la victoria siempre.
Como profeta de la revolución, hemos venido a hablar de paz, más allá de la ilusión de que los problemas del mundo pueden resolver con armas nucleares. Las bombas podrán matar a los hambrientos, a los ignorantes, pero no pueden matar el hambre, las enfermedades, la ignorancia. No pueden tampoco matar la justa rebeldía de los pueblos.
A few days ago, we observed the 73rd anniversary of the assault of the Moncada and Carlos Manuel de Céspedes barracks, an action led by Fidel alongside a group of young men of the 26th of July movement. Many of these brave young Cubans lost their life or were taken captive by the Batista dictatorship. In the aftermath, Fidel was brought to trial, where he assumed his own defense and delivered the statement that would later become renowned as "History will absolve me, la historia me absolverá." This address not only stands as a foundational text of his political philosophy, but also served as a programmatic reference for the Cuban Revolution following its triumph in 1959. The cultural presentation we are about to witness revisits the content of that historic declaration through dramatic readings. This performance aims to draw audiences, in this case you this afternoon, closer to the ideas, arguments, and circumstances that characterize that moment of profound significance in Cuban history and in Fidel's life.
Melba Hernandez.
Pedro Martí.
Abel Ardo Crespo.
Fidel Labrador.
Mario Martí.
Hugo Camejo.
Pedro Véliz.
Andrés García.
Raúl de Aguiar.
Armando del Val.
Andrés Valdez.
Beloved corpses, you that were once the hope of my homeland.
Cast upon my forehead the dust of your decaying bones.
Touch my heart with your cold hands. Groan at my ears.
Each of my moans will turn into the tears of one more tyrant.
Gather around me, that my soul may receive your spirits, and give me the horror of the tombs. For tears are not enough when one lives in infamous bondage. Honorable magistrates, never was a lawyer compelled to practice his profession under more difficult conditions. Never against an accused have more overwhelming irregularities been committed. Here, counsel and defendant are one and the same. As an attorney for the defense, I have been denied even a look at the indictment. As the accused, I have been for the past 76 days shut away in solitary confinement, held incommunicado, in violation of every legal and human consideration. He who is speaking abhors
with all his being childish conceit, and neither by his temperament nor by his present frame of mind is he inclined towards oratorical pose or towards any kind of sensationalism. I am compelled to plead my own defense before this court. There are two reasons. First, because I have been deprived almost entirely of legal advice. Second, because only he who has been outraged as deeply as I, and who has seen his country forsaken, its justice so reviled, can speak on an occasion like this with words made of the blood of his own heart and the very marrow of truth.
As a result of so many obscure and illegal machinations, due to the will of those who govern and the weakness of those who judge, I find myself here, in this little room of the civil hospital, to which I have been brought to be tried in secret, so that my voice may be stifled and so that no one may learn of the things I am going to say. Why then do we need that imposing palace of justice, which the honorable magistrates would without doubt find rather more comfortable? I must warn you, it is unwise to administer justice from a hospital room, surrounded by sentinels with fixed bayonets. The citizens might suppose that our justice is sick. And that it is captive.
I was also prevented from bringing to this trial reference books on any other subject. It makes no difference whatsoever. I carry in my heart the teachings of the maestro, and in my mind, the noble ideas of all men who have defended the freedom of the peoples of the world. I am going to make only one request of this court. I trust it will be granted as a compensation for the many abuses and outrages the accused has had to tolerate without protection of the law. I ask that my right to express myself be respected without restraint. Otherwise, even the merest semblance of justice cannot be maintained, and the last episode of this trial would be, more than any other, one of ignominy and cowardice.
It is a fundamental principle of penal law that an imputed offense must correspond exactly to the offenses as described in the law.
Exactly.
If no law applies exactly to the controversial point, there is no offense.
Exactly.
The article in question reads, textually, a penalty of imprisonment of from 3 to 10 years shall be imposed upon the perpetrator of any act aimed at bringing about an armed uprising against the constitutional powers of the state. The penalty shall be imprisonment for from 5 to 20 years in case the insurrection actually be carried into effect. In what country is the honorable prosecutor living? Who has told him that we sought to bring about an uprising against the constitutional powers of the state? Two things are self-evident. First of all, the dictatorship that oppresses the nation is not a constitutional power, but an unconstitutional one. It was established against the Constitution, over the head of the Constitution, violating the legitimate Constitution of the Republic. The legitimate Constitution is which emanates directly from a sovereign people. I shall demonstrate this point more fully later on.
I warn you, I have just begun. If there is in you, in your hearts, a vestige of love for country, of love for humanity, of love for justice, listen to me attentively. I know that I will be silenced for many years. I know that the regime will try to suppress the truth by all possible means. I know that there will be a conspiracy to sink me into oblivion. But my voice will not be stifled. Strength gathers in my breast even when I feel most alone. And the ardor of my own heart can sustain my voice. No matter how callous cowards may isolate and try to discourage me.
Hey!
From a shack in the mountains, I listened to the radio broadcast by the dictator on Monday, July 27th, while there were still 18 of our men in arms against the government. Those who never experienced similar moments will never be acquainted with bitterness and indignation in life. While the long-cherished hopes of freeing our people lay in ruins about us, we heard those hopes gloated over by a tyrant more vicious, more arrogant than ever. The endless stream of lies and slanders poured out of his crude, odious, repulsive language, which may only be compared with the endless stream of clean, young blood which flowed since the previous night. With his knowledge, consent, complicity, and applause being spilled by the most inhumane gang of assassins, it is possible to imagine. To have believed him for one single minute should suffice to fill a man of conscience with remorse for the rest of his life.
You mean?
At that moment, I could not even hope to brand his miserable forehead with the mark of truth, which condemns him for the rest of his days and for all time to come. Already, a net of more than 1,000 men armed with weapons more powerful than ours, and with orders to bring in our bodies, was closing in around us. Now that people are beginning to learn the truth, now that speaking before you, I am completing the mission I imposed upon myself. May I die peacefully and content, so I shall not mince words about the savage murderers.
At all.
In stating a purpose, the first condition of sincerity and good faith is to do precisely what nobody else ever does. That is to speak with absolute clarity, without fear.
None.
The demagogues and professional politicians who manage to perform the miracle of being right in everything and in pleasing everyone are, of necessity, deceiving everyone about everything.
Everything.
The revolutionaries must proclaim their ideas courageously, define their principles, and express their intentions so that no one is deceived.
No one.
Neither friend nor foe.
The people we counted on in our struggle with these 700,000 Cubans without work, who desired to earn their daily bread honestly without having to emigrate in search of a livelihood.
500,000 farm laborers inhabiting miserable shacks, bohios, who work 4 months of the year and starve during the rest, sharing their misery with their children.
400,000 industrial laborers and stevedores whose retirement funds have been embezzled, whose benefits are being taken away, whose life is eternal work, and whose only rest is in the tomb.
100,000 small farmers who live and die working on land that is not theirs, looking at it with sadness, as Moses looked at the promised land, to die without ever owning it.
30,000 teachers and professors who are so devoted, dedicated, and necessary to the better destiny of future generations, and who are so badly treated and so badly paid.
20,000 small businessmen weighted down by debts, ruined by the crisis, harangued by a plague of grafting and venal officials.
10,000 young professionals, doctors,
engineers,
lawyers,
veterinarians,
school teachers,
dentists,
pharmacists,
newspapermen,
painters,
Sculptors, etc.
who come forth from school with their degrees, anxious to work and full of hope, only to find themselves at a dead end with all doors closed, and where no ear hears their clamor or supplication. These are the people, the ones who know misfortune and therefore are capable of fighting with relentless courage.
In the brief of this case, should be recorded the 5 revolutionary laws that would have been proclaimed immediately after the capture of the Moncada barracks and would have been broadcast to the nation by radio. It is possible that Colonel Chaviano may deliberately have destroyed these documents. But even if he has done so, I remember them.
The first revolutionary law would have returned power to the people and proclaimed the Constitution of 1940, the supreme law of the land, until such time as the people decide to modify or change it.
The second revolutionary law would have granted property, non-mortgageable and non-transferable to all planters, non-quota planters, lessees, sharecroppers, and squatters who hold parcels of 5 caballerías of land or less.
The third revolutionary law would have granted workers and employees the right to share 30% of profits of all large industrial, mercantile, and mining enterprise, including the sugar mills.
The fourth revolutionary law would have granted all planters the right to share 55% of the sugar production and a minimum quota of 40,000 arrobas for all small planters who have been established for 3 or more years.
The fifth revolutionary law would have ordered the confiscation of all holdings and ill-gotten gains of those who had committed frauds during previous regimes, as well as the holdings and ill-gotten gains of all their legatees and heirs.
Furthermore, it was to be declared that the Cuban policy of the Americas would be one of close solidarity with the democratic peoples of this continent, and that those politically persecuted by bloody tyrants oppressing our sister nations would find generous asylum, brotherhood, and bread in the land of Marti. Not the persecution, hunger, and treason they find today.
No.
Cuba should be the bulwark of liberty, and not a shameful link in the chain of despotism.
None of these articles can be called unconstitutional.
No.
The first popularly elected government would have to respect these laws.
Right.
Not only because of moral obligation to the nation, but because when people achieve something they have yearned for throughout generations, no force in the world is capable of taking it away from them again.
Hey, you!
The problem concerning land, the problem of industrialization,
The problem of housing.
The problem of unemployment.
The problem of education.
The problem of the health of the people. Peace, are the 6 problems we will take immediate steps to solve, along with the restoration of public liberties and political democracy.
As soon as the fighting was over, the soldiers descended like savage beasts over Santiago and spent their first fury against the defenseless population.
In the middle of the street, far from the site where the fighting had taken place, they fired a bullet through the chest of an innocent child who was beside the doorstep.
When the father approached, pick him up, they shot him through the forehead with another bullet.
Without a word, they shot Nino Cala, who was on his way home with a loaf of bread in his hands.
It would be an endless task to relate all the crimes and outrages perpetuated against the civilian population.
When the army dealt that way with those who had no part in the action, you can imagine the terrible fate of the prisoners who had taken part in the action or were believed to have taken part. Just as in this trial, they have accused many people not at all involved in our attack. They also killed many prisoners who had not been involved in our attack.
The latter are not included in the statistics the regime has given out. These statistics refer exclusively to our men. Someday, the total number of victims will be known.
La locura de la garganta del sinsonte, si no creyera que en el monte se esconde el trino y la pavora, si no creyera en la balanza, en la razón del equilibrio, si no creyera en el delirio, si no creyera en la esperanza, si no creyera en lo que agencio, si no creyera en mi camino, si no creyera en mi sonido, si no creyera en mi silencio, qué cosa fuera la más.
When you judge a defendant for robbery, Your Honors, do you ask him how long he has been unemployed? Do you ask him how many children he has? Which days of the week he ate and which he didn't? Do you concern yourself with his environment at all? You send him to jail without further thought. But those who burn warehouses and stores to collect insurance do not go to jail. Even though a few human beings should have happened to be cremated. You jail the poor wretch who steals because he is hungry. But none of the hundreds who steal millions from the government has ever spent a night in jail.
At all.
You dine with them in some elegant place, and they enjoy your respect.
Remember that today you are judging an accused man.
We will remember.
But that you yourselves will be judged not once, but many times.
We will remember.
As often as these days are submitted to criticism in the future.
We will remember.
What I say here will be repeated many times.
Many times.
Not because it comes from my lips, but because the problem of justice is eternal. And the people have a deep sense of justice above and beyond the hair splitting of jurisprudence.
The people wield simple but implacable logic in conflict with all that is absurd and contradictory.
Exactly. Let me tell you a story. Once upon a time, there was a republic.
Right?
Okay.
It had its constitution,
Okay.
its laws, its civil rights, a president,
Wow.
Congress, and courts of law. Everyone could assemble, associate, speak, and write with complete freedom.
People were not satisfied with the government officials at the time, but they had the power to elect new officials, and only a few days remained before they were going to do so.
There existed a public opinion, both respected and heeded, and all problems of common interest freely discussed.
Wow. There were political parties, radio and television debates, and forums, and public meetings. The whole nation throbbed with enthusiasm.
But this country had suffered greatly.
Right.
And although it was unhappy, it longed to be happy. And it deserved to be happy.
Yes.
It had been deceived many times.
Many times.
And it looked upon the past with a real horror.
This country blindly believed that such a past could not return. The people were proud of their love for liberty, and they carried their heads held high in the conviction that liberty could be respected as a sacred right.
They felt confident that no one would dare commit the crime of violating their democratic institutions.
They desired change for the better, aspired to progress, and saw this at hand. All their hope was in the future.
Poor country.
Poor country.
One morning, the citizens awaked dismayed under the cover of night. While the people slept, the ghost of the past had conspired and seized the citizen body by the limbs,
By its very throat.
The right to revolt, established in Article 40 of the Constitution, is still valid. Was it established to function while the Republic was enjoying normal conditions? No. This provision is in relation to the Constitution what a lifeboat is to a ship on the high seas.
The lifeboat is lowered only when, for example, the ship is torpedoed by enemies in ambush along its course. With our constitution betrayed, and the people deprived of all of their prerogatives, there was only one right left.
One right.
One right which no power may abolish.
One right.
The right to resist oppression and injustice.
One right.
The right of rebellion against tyranny, honorable magistrates, has been recognized from the very most ancient times to the present day by men of all creeds, ideas, and doctrines.
The philosophers of ancient India upheld principle of active resistance to arbitrary authority. They justified revolution and very often put their theories into practice. One of their spiritual leaders used to say, an opinion held by the majority is stronger than the king himself. A rope woven of many strands is strong enough to drag a lion.
The city-states of Greece, and the Republic of Rome admitted but defended the meting out of violent debts to tyrants.
I come to the close of my defense plea, but I will not end it as lawyers usually do, asking that the accused be freed. I cannot ask freedom for myself when my comrades are suffering in the ignominious prison of Isla de Pinos. Send me there to join them and to share their fate. It is understandable that honest men should be dead or in prison. In this republic where the president is a criminal and a thief.
Still, a more serious problem remains for this hearing. The issues arising from the murder of 70 men. That is to say, the greatest massacre we have ever known. The guilty continue at liberty with weapons in hand, weapons which continually threaten the citizens.
If all the weight of the law does not fall upon them because of cowardice or because of domination of the courts, and if then all the judges and magistrates do not resign, I pity you.
And I regret the unprecedented shame that will fall upon the judicial system.
I know that imprisonment will be as hard for me as it has ever been for anyone, filled with cowardly threats and wicked torture.
But I do not fear prison, just as I do not fear the fury of the miserable tyrant who took the lives of 70 of my comrades. Condemn me. It does not matter. History will absolve me.
¿Qué cosa fuera la marcha sin cantar? Un amasijo hecho de cuerdas y tendón, un revoltijo de carne con madera, un instrumento sin mejor resplandor, que lucecitas montadas parecer. ¿Qué cosa fuera, corazón? ¿Qué cosa fuera? ¿Qué cosa fuera la masa sin cantera? Un testaferro del traidor de los aplausos, un servidor de pasado en copa nueva, un eternizador de dioses del ocaso. Júbilo hervido.
We have the honor of inviting His Excellency Gustavo Véliz Olivares, Ambassador of the Republic of Cuba to the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, to deliver remarks. Ambassador.
Good afternoon. Allow me first adore that I read La Historia Más Soberana like every Cuban maybe sometimes during our study at the school and so on. Me personally, read in Spanish, never read in English. And I have to say that I was quite impressed for this representation. Thank you for this opportunity. His Worship Chinua Lee, thank you for the opportunity to receive us this afternoon. Thank you for your team that support the Cuban Embassy and give the opportunity to have this function significant this afternoon. Honorable Farley Agustin, Chief Secretary, Tobago House Assembly, thanks for coming. Ms. Michaela Pandey, Leader of Patriotic Front, thank you for coming. Honorable David, Mr. David Abdulah, Leader of Movement for Social Justice, and our good friend that's accompanied us several times in different functions. Thank you once again. Professor Rosemary Belli-Antoine, Chancellor of University of the West Indies, thank you for coming and for the support that you more than one time demonstrate to us in our difficult times. Álvaro Sánchez Cordero, Ambassador of Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela and League on the Diplomatic Corps. I acknowledge the presence also of Mr. Onlala, Deputy of Consulate Corps, no? Thank you for coming. Other members of the Diplomatic Corps, my colleagues, member of the Cuban Medical Brigade, we have some of them this afternoon. Cuban resident in Trinidad and Tobago and my leader crew at the Cuban Embassy, welcome every one of you. We are great honor that you attended this afternoon to this celebration. We got it today, like was mentioned before, to commemorate the centenary of the birth of the person whose life and ideas transcended the borders of Cuba. And for millions of people in Cuba and around the world represent resistance, sovereignty, dignity, and solidarity, including myself. That is Fidel Castro Ruz. Today, as we remember his birth, we cannot speak only about the past, because Cuba is once again facing one of the most difficult moments in its recent history. And we have a duty to speak about Fidel. We have a duty to say that it's clearly Cuba, remember Fidel, that clearly Cuba is suffering. Our people are facing a policy of economic, commercial, and financial asphyxiation that for more than 6 decades has intention to weaken the will of our nation. And today, that policy has reached a new dimension. The energy blockade is having direct consequence on the daily life of millions of Cubans. When the fuel is scarce, when it's not an electricity, hospitals are affected. Operating rooms are affected. Medicine refrigeration systems are affected. That's the Cuban situation today. Transportation is affected. Food distribution is affected. Ultimately, people's life in general is affecting strong today in Cuba. According to some figures represented by the Cuban government, the Cuban authority, just a couple examples, 80,500 patients are currently on surgical waiting list in Cuba. That's today, last week actually, including as part of those lists, approximately 12,000 of children. I repeat, waiting on surgical list at the hospital. It has also been reported, or Cuban authority also reported, that around 7,000 children under the 1 year of age have not been able to complete the immunization schedule on time. First time in Cuba after the revolution that happened. Some 170 adults, persons, including 1,200 children, are facing difficulties in receiving the appropriate cancer treatment today in Cuba. I repeat, this is first time after the revolution that we face in that situation. And approximately 34,000 pregnant women have been unable to receive all the prenatal ultrasounds they require. Infant mortality doubled in Cuba until 9.8 per 1,000 births, 1,000 live births. As you know, we used to have less than 4 per 1,000, inclusive during the COVID-19. Today, double. Behind every statistic, there is a life, which is more important. Behind every statistic, there is a mother, father, and child, and family. And that is precisely why we cannot remain indifferent. What is happening in Cuba compels all today or look toward Gaza, unfortunately. Not because the two situations are identical. Of course, we are not. They are identical. In Gaza, as you know, we see a devastation, we see a war. In Cuba, however, we face a different form of sufferings, a policy of economic and energy asphyxiation that threatens to deprive an entire population of essential resources for survival. Cuba is being subjected to a silent genocide. It's one conception that I wanted to share with you this afternoon. Cuba risks becoming a silent Gaza. Behind a hospital without electricity, behind a medicine that does not arrive, behind an operation that has not been postponed, behind a child who does not receive the care he or she needs, does not receive a care that she or he needs in time. This is an expression. It's not merely rhetorical. It has recently been used by United Nations human rights experts to warn of the risk that the situation in Cuba could become a much larger humanitarian crisis. And it's also being used by the member of the United States Congress following recently visit to Cuba. They say, no, it's not my invasion. They visited Cuba and they tested the real situation. That happened about 1 month ago. Our denunciation, therefore, is not directed against the American people, of course, no. So far of that. Our denunciation is directed against a policy that Cuba has faced for decades, more than 60 years, as you know. And this is where Fidel, and this is where Fidel historical significance become extraordinary, because Fidel did not merely confront the blockade. Fidel made the struggle against the blockade a permanent a battle for Cuba sovereignty. For decades, Fidel denounced its consequence before the United Nations, before the people of the world, and before governments across Latin America, the Caribbean, Europe, and Asia. Some of this example, we have the opportunity to see at the video that was shown before here. And there is one historical fact that captured the extraordinary length of that confrontation. Fidel Castro lived through 11 United States presidents, 11, since Eisenhower to Obama. Obama, you know, that visited Cuba after Fidel, but 11 inclusive Obama. 11 American presidents during Fidel's political life, and Fidel outlanded them all politically. I'm proud of that. Of course, we all are in favor of dialogue, not in favor of confrontation. He survived Fidel Castro survived the October missile crisis. He survived the collapse of Soviet Union. He survived the special period. Who visited Cuba know that we suffered during the 90s year very complicated situation that we call special period. We were prepared. We just prepared at that time for option zero oil, something like today. Today worse, I think. And he survived, Fidel, hundreds of assassination attempts. We recently showed a film analysis in that regards. Fidel suffered or survived more than 600 intentions of assassination to his person. It's not the invasion. We have all the documents to demonstrate that. But above all, he survived a policy designated to bring about the collapse of Cuban Revolution. Fidel turned resistance into a doctrine, but not an anti-doctrine. A resistance accompanied by education, by healthcare, by science, by culture, by international cooperation. Trinidad and Tobago is one example of result of this cooperation. I'm proud of that as well. Among the achievements associated with his government were the expansion of literacy and education, the establishment of a universal healthcare system, agrarian reform, and the development of science and biotechnologies, as well as an extensive policy of international medical cooperation. As I said before, some members of the Cuban Medical Brigade accompany us this afternoon. And there is another dimension of his legacy that deserves to be remembered here, particularly in the Caribbean. Fidel understood that Cuba could not live isolated from its brothers and sisters, like Trinidad and Tobago. I have to repeat of that. This is why Cuba stood alongside the people of Africa. I have the proud that we have two ambassadors of Africa this afternoon, of Ghana and Nigeria, alongside the people of Latin America, alongside the people of the Caribbean. This is my first time posted in the Caribbean, and I'm really also proud about that. Cuban doctors went where there was illness. Cuban teachers went where there was illiteracy. Cuban technicians and professionals went where there was need. Everywhere was need. Our doctors came over there. This international vocation is an essential part of the image of Cuba that Fidel sought to project to the world. And that is why we say today, Fidel does not belong only to Cuba. Fidel also belongs to the Caribbean. Fidel is part of the history of Africa. Fidel is part of the history of Latin America and the Caribbean. He's part of the history of the peoples that struggle against colonialism, racism, apartheid, and different forms of domination. Very good that was showed the picture, the close relationship between Fidel Castro and Mandela. No one can deny that he was one of the most influential political figures of the 20th century. And no one can deny that his name is permanently inscribed in contemporary history. Today, 100 years after his birth, Cuba is once again, as I stated before, facing a text. And Cuba, once again, says what Fidel said so many times: surrender is not an option. We will not surrender. We will not renounce of our sovereignty. We will not renounce of our right to exist an independent nation. And we will not renounce of our solidarity to other people like Trinidad and Tobago and the Caribbean in general. That is why I wish to take this opportunity to express on behalf of Cuba of our profound gratitude to the people and organization of Trinidad and Tobago and the Caribbean who for many years have stood alongside of our people. To those who have raised their voice, to those who have sent assistance to us, to those who have defended Cuban right to live in peace, to those who have understood that solidarity knows no borders. To all of you, thank you very much. On this centenary of Fidel, Cuba is not asking for privilege. Cuba is asking for solidarity. Cuba is asking for respect. Cuba is asking for right to live in peace. And Cuba is asking for an end to policy that punish an entire Cuban people. It's unjust and criminal policy. Today, we remember Fidel, but we also look toward the future because his legacy must not be merely a memory, it's a memory. It must be commitment, a commitment to sovereignty, to dignity, to social justice, to solidarity among the people, to defense of peace, and to the conviction that even a small nation have the right to determine their own destiny. Friends, 100 years ago, Fidel Castro was born, and until his final days, he held firmly to one conviction: Cuba must be master of its own destiny. I insist. Today, from his beloved Caribbean, we reaffirm that conviction. And we also reaffirm our friendship with the people who have stood alongside Cuba, particularly with the brother people here in Trinidad and Tobago. May the friendship between our people continue. May solidarity continue. May the struggle for peace continue. And may, in face of diversity, the spirit of resistance embodied by Fidel remain alive. Let's us raise our glasses, I don't have glasses, but we will, to Cuba, to the Caribbean. This is a mistake of protocol, sorry. We have a small crew, please. Let's us raise our glasses to Cuba, to the Caribbean, to the friendship between our peoples, and on this centenary, to another 100 years and beyond in the company of Fidel Castro legacy. Long life Cuba, long life Caribbean solidarity, long life the friendship between Cuba and Trinidad and Tobago, long life Fidel. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ambassador. As we bring this ceremony to a close, we carry with us not only the memory of a remarkable historical figure, but also the enduring relevance of his ideals, ideals of justice, sovereignty, and solidarity, that continue to inspire people across the globe. The centenary of Fidel Castro Ruz invites us not only to look back in reverence, but to look forward with renewed commitment to the principles of human dignity, international friendship, and the pursuit of a more equitable world. We extend our deepest gratitude once more to all who have contributed to the success of this event. Your presence here today has honored the legacy of a man whose life was dedicated to the service of his people and the cause of the oppressed. First and foremost, we extend our deepest gratitude to Comrade David Abdulah, whose dedication and efforts has been the cornerstone for this commemoration. We would like now to invite Comrade Abdulah to deliver the vote of thanks.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. All protocols having previously been expressed, let me just say a very good evening to all friends, sisters and brothers, and comrades. On behalf of the Ambassador and the Embassy of the Republic of Cuba in Trinidad and Tobago, we would like to express thanks, first of all, to His Worship the Mayor of Port of Spain, Chinua Alleyne, councillors and aldermen of the City of Port of Spain, as well as the staff of the Port of Spain City Corporation. If I could single out two, which is dangerous, Brother Anthony Husbands and Sister Michelle, who had a lot to do with the organizing of the logistics in this wonderful Murchison Brown Auditorium. To my good friend and comrade John Julien for his video and photographic work. That video show was curated by John, and I was speaking to him, the ambassador was speaking to him, and making changes as it went along, but hopefully it captured some of the essence of the life of Fidel. A very special thank you to the various firms that contributed to the refreshments, which we will enjoy in a short while. Blue Waters, Acado, Creamery, and of course, to the Association of Cubans here in Trinidad and Tobago. I want to express a special thanks to the creative team. When I met with the ambassador for us to discuss this event, I said to him that we should try to bring Fidel alive so that we will be imbued with his spirit, and that the best way to do that would be through a dramatic presentation. And so I spoke to a good friend and colleague, Rawle Gibbons, former director of the Creative Arts Center of the University of the West Indies here at St. Augustine, and to Wendell Manwarren, and we incidentally met at the book launch of Malcolm Jai Kernahan, who wrote about the experience of NUF, and which was a guerrilla movement armed group here in Trinidad in the early 70s. And incidentally, as Malcolm spoke about his book, he was asked, you know, what kind of inspired you? And he said, history will absolve me, that famous speech by Fidel. And that was what ignited this idea for the dramatic readings. So a very special thanks to Rawle Gibbons and to Wendell Manwarren, both of whom were involved in the production. Wendell is here somewhere backstage. Rawle is out of the country but was viewing it online. And to the team of very powerful and talented actors who did the dramatic reading for us. Conrad Paris, Michael Sherry, Abio Jackson, Zachary Sosa, and apologies on the program because there was a change just as the program was being printed. So it wasn't David Barrow, as those of you who are discerning would have picked up, but rather Anton Brewster, who was our fifth dramatic reader. So let's give a tremendous round of applause to that creative team. And not leaving out as well Asher Stewart, who was the production person, quietly making sure that everything ran very efficiently and well. We, of course, have to thank all of you for coming out and attending. We have a full house here. There are people standing, there are people upstairs in the balcony. So we really have a great participation this evening, in spite of this being the middle of the vacation. But I want to shift for one moment and say collectively, on behalf of all of us in Trinidad and Tobago, a very big thank you to the revolutionary people of Cuba. We owe them a tremendous debt. They have provided and made sacrifices through that provision of scholarships for our young people, coaches who trained our athletes, including Keyshawn Walcott when he won gold at the Olympics. They have provided technical support in so many different ways. And so we owe a tremendous debt of gratitude to the Cuban people. And therefore, we say thank you to the people of revolutionary Cuba. And then we have to say thank you to Fidel. I was honored to have met him and conversed with him on more than one occasion, on two occasions. But without Fidel, Cuba would not have succeeded as a revolutionary country and would not have been able to achieve all that it did and would not have extended solidarity to all of the world. And so we have to say thank you to Fidel, man of ideas and a man of great principle and someone who has tremendous moral authority. In that little photograph that you saw me in the film clip, I was in a conference, a solidarity conference, and I kind of went to the side of the stage as he was coming back onto the stage. And he asked me, what do you think about this conference? The conference was the first World Solidarity Conference with Cuba. So my immediate response was solidarity. And he said, no, the importance of this conference is about humanity. And so we thank Fidel for his unique contribution to humanity. And in that, therefore, in the words that he himself expressed, which Che had expressed to him in the farewell, we say, hasta la victoria siempre. And we also say, because this is where Cuba is now, patria o muerte, venceremos. And I would like all of us, as we thank Fidel and the Cuban people, I would like all of us to say together, Cuba is not alone. Cuba is not alone. Cuba is not alone. Let's say it so that it's heard all over the world and in Washington in particular. Cuba is not alone. Cuba is not alone. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Mr. Abdulah, and to reiterate your words, thank you to all of you for your presence. You are the living proof that Cuba is not alone and that the ideals we honor today continue to beat in the hearts of the people in Cuba and in the Caribbean. May the bonds of friendship between Cuba and Trinidad and Tobago and among all Caribbean nations continue to flourish in the spirit of mutual respect and shared aspiration, and of course, thinking about Fidel. So thank you, good evening, and please join us at the back. Thank you for all of you.